Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Loony Bin. My name is Loony. Today, I want to talk to you about a debate, argument, discussion. Um, it's none of those things. It's just one group of the Final Fantasy VII community trying very hard to erase a certain part of Final Fantasy VII that, to me, and for a silly reason, by the way, is just like it's disrespectful to the devs because of how much work they put on and put into, this world, these characters, and it's just like really you want to erase something because it does the one thing you don't like to a ship that you love. To me, it's just it's one of the things where like you don't need to do that, and really, if that's what you believe in, that means that your ship doesn't necessarily have a lot of ground to stand on. It really does, because if you need to erase an entire game or entire lore of something, your ship might not be as strong as you think, right? And now, this isn't me discrediting your ship or why you shouldn't ship it. It's not going to be about that, but it's the idea of why some people in the community, specifically fans of the Cloud and Ever ship, want Crisis Core to be removed, or that it was a mistake to make it. Because I have my issues with Crisis Core. I'm not gonna lie. I hate the gameplay. I don't like the gameplay. I don't like the slot mechanic. I don't like how, just the overall combat feels. I don't like the moving around that you do in that game. I do not like the dubbing, because the dubbing sounds like they gave the voice actors no direction whatsoever, and it could be possible that it was done to replicate, I'm talking about the remake version of Crisis Core, to replicate, the weird, awkward voice acting from the original Crisis Core. It could definitely be that. But the dubbing was pretty bad, and it's pretty bad when you hear, a lot of these voice actors that you listen to in remake, voice these characters, and it seems off. Because they were exceptional in remake, exceptional in rebirth. Yet in Crisis Core, they were like they had no direction whatsoever, right? Which is always bizarre. That was one of the most bizarre things as I was going and playing through Crisis Core Reunion. That was an issue. You could also point to the whole Genesis thing. I could see why people don't like the Genesis thing. I don't personally have an issue with Genesis, but I did not like him reciting Loveless several fucking times in the goddamn game. It just felt so annoying, right? And other than that, I don't have a problem with Genesis. I know some people have an issue with how Sephiroth and Genesis are connected in some form of way, to leading to Sephiroth doing what he did with the Nibelheim incident. I get that, but it wasn't really that much of an issue for me, right? And again, I think Crisis Core is a great game, but the reason why I think Crisis Core is a great game is because of the lore, the story that was told in Crisis Core. While it isn't, the most amazing story, what it did is give us a much deeper look at a lot of these characters that we then grow and love in Final Fantasy VII, the original game. We learn about why Cloud wants to be a soldier, right? Why and how Cloud eventually winds up in Midgard. We learn about all that stuff, like who inspired him, to be this so-called hero that he believes he is in Final Fantasy VII, right? And it connects straight to, short stories that Nojima even writes in 1,000 Ways to a Guild, and traces to paths for a lot of these characters. Something that you don't necessarily get within Final Fantasy VII. Sure, we learn more about we learn about the Nibelheim incident and stuff like that. We learn about Cloud and Tifa's promise, all this stuff. But we never really get much of a background around Aerith. We don't really get much of a background around Sephiroth and why he became the way he is. Aside from the very, little tidbits that we get, from here and there. And there's certain parts laid out throughout the entire Final Fantasy game that, you could catch up on, read lore even within the game and stuff like that to really get some sort of idea. But Crisis Core expanded on that in such a way that I think is very important, and it's a game that I think Nojima and the rest of the development team wanted to make, to explore more of that. He wanted to explore more of the characters, how they first started off, Like, for example, Aerith has the biggest character development from Crisis Core, to Final Fantasy VII because of what happens in Crisis Core. When we meet Aerith in Crisis Core, we see her be like this very, secluded, this introverted, this, very shy person who has this sense of being bubbly, who has this like small, hints of being outgoing, but she's afraid because people all have thought of her as always being weird. That is something that you could read in Trace of Two Paths that showcase just how much a lot of people, as she was growing up, always thought that she was a little weird, and despite all that, she continued tending flowers, she continued doing all of this, and then when Zack, crashes down into the church and finally meets her, he doesn't see her as weird. Or if he does, he doesn't find it as an issue. He doesn't find it as an insult to her. He thinks that her being a little weird is great because it gives her, individuality. It gives her a personality that he finds and adores about her. And it's through this confidence that she, gets from Zack and his, words, his actions towards her, that she becomes this outgoing, this free-spirited character, who wants to see the world, who loves this planet, who loves the people of the planet, that eventually becomes the character that we know in Final Fantasy VII is because of, the way she's inspired by Zack. That is important because you want to learn more about these characters that you love, right? Crisis Core gave you that first look of like how Aerith became who she is in Final Fantasy VII. And if you love these characters, you love seeing that. You love seeing that lore, right? And you don't let a ship bother you. If it harms your ship, you don't let that, blind you from what Crisis Core does, right? We even learn more about Zack and like who Zack was, because she mentions Zack in Final Fantasy VII when she's talking to Cloud about, the first person that she fell in love. We didn't know much. He's barely in the game. Zack then comes into play in Crisis Core. We learn so much more. His relationship with Angeal, his relationship with Sephiroth and the rest of the soldiers, Genesis. His and Cloud's relationship that we never really got to know, but we saw during the live stream sequence that Cloud was with Zack, right? In some form or way during the Nibelheim incident, right? So it's like, how do you not like that? Like, why would you want to erase that? Now, you probably want it to be, slightly different so that it helps your ship in some sort of way. But it's talking about the past, right? Just because, Cloud and Aerith don't necessarily meet up in, Crisis Core, right? It doesn't change what happens in Final Fantasy VII. Because that's what the story is that they're telling you. Because at the end of the day, Aerith still dies in the original game. After that, nothing happens between Cloud and Aerith that points to something, that could become canon. Because she's dead halfway through the game. And I know, you who probably ship Cloud and Aerith probably wanted to see more in Crisis Core in regards to Cloud and Aerith. But they never meet. Because that's not the time for them to meet. Right? And I get it. Zack falling from the church is replicating what Cloud did in Final Fantasy VII as he also falls down to the church. Crisis Core comes out several years after Final Fantasy VII, so you probably feel like, oh, they're just, doing that because of, it resembles similar to how, like, Zack, or how Cloud meets Aerith for the first time and using that as Zack because, of some reason. I don't know exactly what the reason why they would think that, but they believe it retcons everything between Cloud and Aerith's relationship and how they first meet and stuff like that. But that's not what Crisis Core is all about. It's all about getting to know more about these characters, getting to know more about who these individuals are, more lore behind these characters, and I love seeing that, right? Even if I have a ship that I enjoy, right, I would want to learn more about the characters more than my ship. Why? Because I love the characters first and foremost, right? I love shipping, but I cannot ship characters without understanding them first and why, their bond and relationship grows, and why I like that as a ship. Because if you don't love the characters involved in your ship, then you can't really love the ship as much as you probably can, right? You'll be surprised just how much more you could love your ship by just loving the characters themselves. And Crisis Core does that really well, I think, right? There's some issues like Genesis and Sephiroth's relationship and all that, fiasco and connections, right? But you learn so much more, especially about like Cloud's, like why Cloud is like a hero, or acts like a hero or acts like a soldier in Final Fantasy VII, because we see what Zack's influence on Cloud is. Zack's influence on both Cloud and Aerith is phenomenal. It's phenomenal writing, because you could clearly see why they get inspired by him. And I've always wanted to learn more about that, like who these characters are and where they get the inspiration from, right? And you get to see the relationship between Zack and Cloud. It's so like it's two good friends meeting each other. Two people who have very similar backgrounds and growing up, countryside and not in a big city, and they bond over that, and it's so fun seeing their bond grow. Even if it's for a short amount of time, even if it's for very little, you could still see that bond grow, right? Even through the emails that they send each other. And then they grow even stronger. Their bond goes even stronger as they go to Nibelheim, and you see Cloud's, lack of confidence, right? Which leads to 1,000 Ways to a Gil, where you see some of that lack of confidence from Cloud, right? He gets tricked, where he gets tricked into, losing money and like losing his chance of going into soldier because he was tricked by this individual that he meets during one of his trainings, or like as he was going somewhere. I forgot. I don't remember fully exactly what happened, but something like that. And you see that lack of confidence, and you see and realize that, Cloud is a very exceptional fighter. You see that. And you can read that through 1,000 Ways to a Gil, right? And then you find out that the only reason why he's not able to, join soldier is because he doesn't have, the mentality to be a soldier, meaning that he doesn't have the confidence. And that was really the reason why he never could join the soldier program, right? Then through the entire Nibelheim incident, he slowly gains that confidence, especially, after Sephiroth hurts Tifa. He goes in, charges, tries to attack, and is successful, in attacking Sephiroth, right? And then after that, you find, him in a test tube with Zack, Zack, releasing him, escaping him, and, Zack telling Cloud all of this, all his journeys, all his adventures that he eventually gets inspired on to create this soldier persona that you see in Final Fantasy VII. That's just how important Zack is. Just these characters that you love have, probably wanted to learn more about, and you finally get that in Crisis Core, and just because of one reason, you want that erased completely. Crisis Core does so much with the development of characters that wanting it to be deleted because of that one reason, because of a shipping reason, I'm sorry, to me, I could never do that at all, even as a shipper. And you're probably saying, well, you don't ship Cloud and Aerith, so of course you'll feel that way. I have shipped several things in my lifetime, many different franchises, where I've gotten, past that doesn't necessarily help my ship, but you know what? That didn't matter, because I got to know more about the characters and who they were and why they became, their character development, their character growth. It happens. I get that. It happens. But to not want the game to exist because it doesn't help your agenda, I feel is disingenuous and a little bit disrespectful to the, the creators, to the developers, because it doesn't do something that you wanted it to do. Right? It's probably one of the reasons why a lot of, Cloud and Aerith shippers don't necessarily know about, the information you know about Aerith in Trace of Two Paths, because it doesn't really help their ship, because there's nothing involving Cloud and Aerith in it. But it has so much lore, so much more information about who Aerith was as a child, growing up and being called weird, and like, her Cetra, slowly growing, her abilities and connection to the planet. You see that in Trace of Two Paths. And to me, I feel like if you are letting a ship or some sort of agenda, right, blind you from trying to really understand these characters and want to learn more about these characters, to me, I just won't let that happen. Even if it harms my ship, I really want to know more about these characters and who they are as individuals, because at the end of the day, for me, I love character writing more so than the entire plot of the story. I really fucking do. Because it's much more interesting to me in getting to the personality and, you know, why characters are like what they are. I love that a lot. You may not like it, and maybe that's part of the reason why you don't necessarily like some of this stuff and why you're only focusing on one thing. But I think with the intent behind why you don't want Crisis Core, I feel like it's very disingenuous, and you miss out on a lot of things that you can love about your character, you know. But, you know, it's not up to me to decide what you should do, what you should think. At the end of the day, you have that opinion. Just like this is all my own opinion, and you don't have to like agree with it. Right. But thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video and why I explained a little bit as to why I think Crisis Core is a really good game lore-wise, not necessarily good game gameplay-wise, that really connects to Final Fantasy VII and why it makes Final Fantasy VII much, much better, right? And just overall, just a very important part to the Final Fantasy VII lore, despite Genesis. Right. All right, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. All right, like, comment, and subscribe.